So moving up the value chain. Next one I want to go a little deeper on is infrastructure. Now, remember I said, what's the fastest path to a modern economy? And I did posit what I thought the answer was. But let me start with and first talk about what people typically think of when you think infrastructure. They think of roads. They think of physical infrastructure. Everybody who's been to China, China has done a fantastic job with this infrastructure. India struggles mightily, if you've been to India. And then behind that, Africa is severely handicapped on this topic of infrastructure, right? And then Harry Broadman from the World Bank is here somewhere. A study was done with World Bank that says, in fact, if transportation costs went down 10%, moving of goods around in Africa, trade could go up 25%. I mean, that sort of connection here. Because you have to remember, it is a country, Nick alluded to some of this, 20% of the population has electricity, less than 20. Less than 3% has access to physical telephone lines. And if you look sub-Saharan and you compare that to the UK, which is 100th of the size, you will find more roads in the UK than in that same thing. Now, our veterans all understand this. They know this. I mean, if you look at this, why did it happen? People can say it was bad governance, money was wasted, it was, sheer distance and size. It's the idea that there isn't one Africa to try to build all this infrastructure around. But even against all that, there clearly is another case, progress being made. Some of it is being made from international investment. China. Well, Nick, you alluded to both China and America having big, great trade. And as a result of that, China has built hospitals, schools. Now, there's two sides of that story. I mean, we'll talk about that in maybe some of these panels, right? Because in return, China also pays natural resources that come out. So two sides. But because of that international investment being built, another fascinating one, right? Private enterprise. As those wireless companies are all laying cable, right? They're building roads and power stations because they need it to do what they do, right? So that's a word on the physical infrastructure. But tough race, some of those other countries I mentioned. We all thought that what there is hope for is this build out of the internet and the communications infrastructure. Even though I know some of you, and I know many of you from the university environment are sitting here saying, yes, however, access to the internet in a university is 100 times what it costs for an American university to access the internet today. That said, Nick mentioned the build-out of some of this, right? And there are, in fact, actually 4 competing efforts to build out this high-speed line down the East Coast. Difficult, but it will get done. It'll get done because the economics are very, very compelling of what's happening out there. And again, it's private enterprise also stepping up in a step change here. But there's one other motivation, and the reason I'm so high after been through all of this on why communications and the internet, this infrastructure is going to happen, is because some may think this gap to manufacturing, the gap to China or Japan, is too big. So what do you do to open up a services economy in Africa? What do you do to open it up? Affordable communications, right? Gets implemented out there. And at cocktails last night, I don't know if I see where Wasim Sheikh is from Cisco. He said, I get hope when I look out there and I see the Maasai installing Cisco equipment here, out in the bush. Makes me a believer, okay? And I think there is real reason to believe, which is why the other theme I picked, I want to hook to this, I picked the wireless topic to go a little bit deeper in, because I said it's transforming Africa in unseen ways. So let's talk a minute about this. First, what I'm not going to talk about, because if I was going to tell you that the big aha was that wireless will leapfrog landlines, you would all find this very boring, all right? Particularly on the heels of having said only 3% of people have, fixed lines that are out there. But 75% of all phones are cell phones, are mobile. And in 4 years, mobile subscribers have gone from 10 million to 200 million. 200 million, right? What did Nick tell you the population was, right? To 200 million in 4 years. Now, this is not about personal communications. What I want you to think about is this is a tool that's now in the hands of hundreds of millions of people. And you know the old saying, necessity is the motherhood of invention? It is driving new and unique applications out there that the Western world doesn't see. And part of it is because that is the infrastructure. That's what's there, and you're going to do what you can do with it. MTN, South Africa, a great example, an advanced 3G network. Okay, streaming live television, right, onto your phones, right? CNN, watch it on the news. I mean, you can't do that here very well as you're on a bus somewhere. Minutes on your phone. They become the de facto currency, right? In fact, I guess you could think of your SIM card in your phone as a credit card practically. That sort of thinking, and you trade them. And then Safaricom, another company, think of this. They've actually become a financial institution, right? M-Pesa, which is the word in Swahili for money, you're able to transfer cash with your phone, text messaging on your phone, and then you go to one of their agents, you get your money. This is up and running in Kenya. So, interesting. Wireless turned a communications company into a financial institution. So, it's a nice entry. Two more topics I picked. Finance. Let's talk about finance for a minute, right? And I picked kind of a sort of a pointed phrase here, the idea that lending in a world where a mattress is the bank of choice. Now, why did I say it that way? You know, only 10% of land in Africa is legally owned. So there is really very little of what we would traditionally think of as collateral that's there. So whether you can say it's despite this or it is because of this, right, it's led to this big boom on the microfinance revolution that's out there, on microfinancing. 800 plus lenders, millions of borrowers. Of course, the issue is around how do you judge risk and the cost to administer this, right? Because it is not uncommon in some places to see 30% interest rates charged, 3-0 interest rates charged here. It's not uncommon to see collection weekly. I know a study in Uganda, in some cases people going 20 kilometers to go and collect their money, right? Some of the agents going that far to reach different borrowers. But this is a booming business born out of necessity. I had the great pleasure of having breakfast this morning with Jessica Jackley Flaherty, she is going to talk about this. She's the co-founder of Kiva.org, a great successful small business about hooking micro lenders, borrowers together, right?